Sup, guys? It's Toad back with you. I'm later than usual, obviously, by a couple hours. Uh, Different scheduling, baby. But this is going to allow me more time because I'm remote today, baby. So we'll have some more time to break this down. Tuesday slates are always huge. Yesterday wasn't good. Yesterday I went 1-2, and that was only because right after I did the show, the number that I actually grabbed on Howard was plus 10.5, and that really mattered because the game landed 10. I'm pretty sure. So hopefully, if you followed me on that, you got a better number on that. It was 10.5 for a while out there, but then later at night it dropped back down into the 9.5 range. They were in that game, like not in the game really, but within the spread for a bunch of it, and then of course it comes down the wire and you start fouling, giving up some points, whatever. But that got there, and then the other two were just bad. I don't even remember what were my other plays last night. I don't even remember what they were. Buffalo Sabres. I mean, that was a close game. It went into overtime, but they were losing the game 3-0, and then they just teased me by tying the game, sending it into overtime, and then losing. It's like, dude, just lose 3-0. Like, come on, man, or lose 4-0. If you're gonna go down 3-0 and then tie the game and get my hopes up, just don't. Just don't. If you're gonna lose anyway. And then we had what was the other game that I had? I had something in the NBA, right? I don't even remember what it was. I can look, I guess. Because I have the schedule up. Oh, isn't that helpful? Let me see. What was the game that I had? What did I play? I don't even remember what I did, man. Oh yeah, Washington. Yeah, they didn't cover either. Yeah, great. I don't know. I don't even know if they really had chances, so I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. But we're gonna turn it around today. College basketball, more conference tournaments are beginning. I will talk about those. I don't have any plays in those. A lot of times I pass on the first rounds of those. I was wrong about Eastern Kentucky last night, too, which was probably the strongest lean that I had in those. And what I forgot to mention is that was also triple revenge for Eastern Kentucky because Jacksonville actually was the team that eliminated them in the A-Sun tournament last year. And Eastern Kentucky still didn't get it done. They were winning, I think, by double digits at halftime. And they got blasted in the second half. Whatever. Let's move on to today's slate, man. I have 4 college basketball plays, I think, and they're all late. So we're going late night action there. 1 hockey play, 2 NBA plays, and some of those are earlier. Let's talk about college basketball, man. We got a lot going on here. I'm going to skip some of these, but we do have, starting at 6 p.m., we have another conference tournament beginning, which is the Sun Belt tournament. And I believe the bottom 4 teams are all playing in the opening round of that tournament, which is the 11 through 14 seeds. Coastal Carolina and Southern Miss is this the 11-14 game or is this the 12-13 game? I don't even remember the way that they structure this. This is the 12-13 game. This game is a little bit interesting because Coastal Carolina, they're definitely the worst team, man. I do think there's a gap between UL Monroe, Coastal Carolina. Those are the 2 bottom teams in this conference, and I think the teams above that are all a little bit of a level above that. But Coastal Carolina, actually, the one time they played Southern Miss, they actually went in and beat Southern Miss by 9 points. And I think looking at this box score, it seemed like it was a little bit misleading to me as Coastal Carolina really just kind of ran away with this game. But they shot 50% from the floor, 42.9 from 3. Southern Miss had a really bad game, only 27.8 from 3, but 27.8%. I mean, not that either of these teams are great shooting teams. The Coastal Carolina shot well above what they usually do. They lost the turnover battle, still won the game. They did win the rebound battle, but I think there are some things that are misleading about this result, man. Coastal Carolina had 34 free throw attempts in this game. Actually, Southern Miss had 42. What am I saying? They both shot horribly from the free throw line as well. So I don't know what to take away from that. Just tons of free throw attempts in that game. I don't know, but Southern Miss is the better team. And I think that maybe if they're playing in revenge mode, they're just going to be a little bit more up for this game. I tend to just lean to the better team once we get to these tournaments here when there isn't that much of a situation otherwise. I mean, I'm not going to play this game, but where is Southern Miss? There they are. They're up from 1.5 to 2.5 with juice, so the line is moving that way. So they did lose at home to Coastal Carolina, like I said, which is kind of embarrassing. This game is not at home. This entire tournament is being played on a neutral site in Pensacola, Florida, which is, I believe, where they always play this tournament, or at least for the recent years. I don't have that much else on that game, but I would slightly lean to Southern Miss in that one. UMass Lowell and Maine, I mean, that's kind of a big game in the American East. UMass Lowell has really completely fallen off. A lot of recent losses, but Maine, they're coming off a pretty tough home loss to Bryant, man. Although now this is senior night for them, so maybe they will still get up for this game against UMass Lowell, but they already beat UMass Lowell on the road, so it is road revenge for UMass Lowell. Maine is sitting decently. I think they still probably need to win this game to make sure that they're one of the top 3 seeds here, although I don't know if they really care about that. Like, being one of the top 4 seeds does basically mean that I forget how the American East, I think they actually went to a neutral site now. I can't remember, though, because they used to have this weird structure where they had like a rotation where any of the teams in the conference might be hosting the conference tournaments. Then you'd have like the 4 seed in the conference would actually be hosting the entire tournament. It's just kind of an unfair home advantage. So they stopped doing that, but I don't know how they structure this tournament. But maybe the difference between the 3 and the 4 seed doesn't really matter that much. UMass Lowell did just get a win over Binghamton to break some of this bad losing momentum that they had. So I don't know what I would think about this game, man. It's senior night for Maine, but it is road revenge for UMass Lowell. And the odds makers are actually telling you Maine is not even the better of these two teams, even though UMass Lowell has completely dropped down in the standings. They're being lined like they're still actually the slightly better team over Maine. That's probably the way that I would lean. Maine down from 3-2 in that game. Might lean to UMass Lowell slightly there. Georgia at South Carolina. This has got playoffs, tournament implications here, although I guess tournament is technically a playoff. South Carolina didn't have any conference wins, and then they won 2 of their last 3 games, man. And this Murray Boyles character here, this guy in South Carolina, he is a really, really good player. South Carolina, I would say they're not as bad as their record might indicate. I mean, they're playing in the SEC. The SEC is really tough. Yeah, they're the worst team in the SEC, but now they've won 2 of their last 3 games, big games against Texas and Arkansas. They did have a kind of big letdown after that big win over Texas. They went out to Missouri, though. Strange environment to have to go to. Not used to going to Missouri, probably, or at least not totally used to going there, because Missouri is somewhat new to the SEC. They got hammered in that game. Then they came back home and won again against Arkansas. Texas and Arkansas, bubble teams, just having these bad losses against South Carolina. Now, South Carolina's off that, and they do have Tennessee up next, which is a big game, but this is senior night for them, so I do think they're still going to be focused, and it's Georgia. I mean, Georgia's a bubble team. South Carolina might want to play a spoiler here, and they already lost at Georgia by 11 earlier in the season, so it is a little bit of revenge as well. So I do expect South Carolina is going to show up in this game, but Georgia also is going to have to show up in this game, and Georgia is a bubble team. In my bracketology right now, I believe I have them in the round of 64 right now because so many of these other teams lost, and they just beat Florida and Texas. 2 huge wins. So this spot kind of doesn't look that great for Georgia, man. It's a second straight road game, a third road game in the last 4 games, and then they have senior night against Vandy up after this. So this is a down spot in the schedule, but when you're Georgia and you need to win every game to make sure that you're going to get in the tournament, you can't afford to lose any game. So the pressure is going to be on Georgia, though, more than it's going to be on South Carolina here. And that was a big win over Texas, man. Coming off an even bigger win against Florida, really. But that bubble battle against Texas, that was a huge win. So put a gun to my head. I mean, please don't. But if you did, I would probably have to lean to South Carolina in this game. And this is a pick-em price. So, I mean, everybody knows Georgia must win. They need to keep winning. They need to win. They got to get into the tournament. And South Carolina, even though they've won those last couple of games, I think that just gives South Carolina a little bit of confidence. So I think maybe South Carolina getting a little bit overlooked here. And the odds makers are telling you that these teams are actually a little bit closer than you would think. So you look at the records and you think, well, it's just a pick-the-winner situation. Of course, Georgia should win this game, right? But it's not that easy, man. Georgia is up a little bit from pick 'em to a pick 'em with juice, but 50% of tickets on them, 87% of the cash coming in on the South Carolina side. So again, it would be South Carolina or pass for me in that game. Rutgers is at Purdue. Rutgers is coming off this close call against Michigan, man. And this is not just a close call, but Rutgers is winning this game. They were winning by 12 with not that much time left in the game. And then they completely fell silent, man. And they didn't score for a span of, 6 minutes of game time. Just really really bad from Rutgers there. They had Michigan completely on the ropes, man, and then just lost that game. That's going to be tough to bounce back from for Rutgers, because if you're Rutgers, you know you're not going anywhere. Now you just come off of that game where you almost beat Michigan. You got to turn around and play another road game, fourth road game in the last 5 games. 2 of them being on the Pacific Coast. You got to go to Purdue, which is not an easy place to play. Purdue finally turned it around and broke that loss streak after they lost 4 games in a row. They beat UCLA, which is a big win, but are they really going to suffer a letdown here when they were losing a bunch of games prior to that and they just killed that losing momentum finally? And this is senior night for them. Purdue did go on the road and beat Rutgers by 18, though, so it is possible they don't have like full focus on Rutgers, but I don't know, man. I mean, it's senior night for them. Rutgers, when you're a team like Rutgers and you almost pull off a big upset, which I think was probably about a 10-point upset, and you have Michigan on the ropes like that, and you fall apart and lose that game, and you're playing all these road games like that, this game for me, yeah, I would lean to Purdue, or like it would be Purdue or pass in this game for me. Which I'm passing, but Purdue's up from 10.5 to 11, so the odds maker, or the money seems to agree with me. 71% of the cash on Purdue, 50% of the tickets evenly split. Yeah, again, I would lean to Purdue in that game. Kentucky is coming off that loss to Auburn, where Kentucky usually does pretty well at home against Auburn historically, but now Kentucky's got the bad news now that Jackson Robinson, who's missed a bunch of games recently, he's not going to return this season, and that's a big loss for Kentucky. I mean, he's one of their starters. He's going to need wrist surgery. They did get their point guard, Lamont Butler, back, but Robinson is kind of a bigger, more physical guard, so they're definitely going to miss him. They've kind of been alternating wins and losses here. I mean, this is senior night. I mean, they're coming off that tough game against Auburn, though, with Missouri up next. It does almost look like a sandwich spot, even though it is senior night. But, I mean, coming off a loss like that, maybe you will refocus. And now, because you know Robinson isn't coming back, that kind of question mark isn't there anymore, and you don't have to, like, wonder anymore. So you know that this is going to be your group of guys moving forward. And I think this is the second game back with Butler, I want to say, or maybe it's the third. So they're going to be a little bit more used to having him back in the rotation as well. So not all of the things are bad as far as Kentucky is concerned in this matchup here. LSU coming off a few tough games in a row, man. They played pretty decently against Florida, Tennessee, and Mississippi State, so that's not bad. Now another road game in a row. It is kind of a tough spot for them, so yeah, I don't know what I would do in this game. I mean, probably, I don't even know if I want to say that I have a lean on this. Kentucky's up from 12 to 12.5, but 83% of tickets and only 75% of the cash on them. I mean, you're probably not going to get any value laying points with Kentucky. Like, the line's probably a little bit jacked up on them because it's Kentucky and, you know, they're a name team. And I don't see a whole lot going on with that situation. Although maybe the situation looks a little bit more difficult for LSU, really. The Patriot League tournament is starting as well, which these games are going to be played at the home arena of the higher seed, I believe. So Lehigh at Loyola Maryland is actually at Loyola Maryland. This is, I don't even know. What seeds are they in this Patriot tournament? I have no idea. The bottom 4 teams are playing today, I believe. So this is going to be the 8 and 9, I believe, and Lafayette and Holy Cross are 7 and 10. Is that right? Yeah. So this is the 8-9 matchup here with Loyola Maryland being the 8. Loyola Maryland, I believe these teams played twice, and they each won at home, if I got that right. No. Loyola Maryland swept the season series. I don't know how I missed that. So this is technically double revenge for Lehigh, but does that just mean that Loyola Maryland has an advantage over Lehigh, like matchup-wise? I mean, Lehigh is definitely not a very good team. Loyola Maryland, I mean, there isn't a whole lot to see here. Loyola Maryland actually shot pretty poorly from three-point range in that game at home, and Lehigh actually shot better from three-point range. Loyola Maryland lost the turnover battle, and they still won the game, dominating them on the boards. And then Loyola Maryland in the other game, which was at Lehigh, won by even more. They actually had the closer game at home. Loyola Maryland, let's see here, actually shot well in this game. Both teams actually shot pretty well in this game. But again, Loyola Maryland completely dominated on the board. So I think Loyola Maryland does have some of the things that you look for in kind of a matchup advantage, where it looks like they do dominate in the paint. This game, I think, has kind of a low spread here. So you can kind of compare the spread to what it was back in, so Loyola Maryland was a 2.5-point underdog at Lehigh, and back at home, Loyola Maryland was a 2.5-point favorite. So these teams not getting a whole lot for home advantage here, but Loyola Maryland, I think, is actually lower than that in this game. Yeah, they're only up to 1.5 now, so some money looks like it's coming in on Loyola Maryland, and I would agree with that side, even though a lot of times I tend to think, oh, you want to see if there's anything misleading if a team won both season matchups. I don't really think there was in this matchup. I think Loyola Maryland just dominates Lehigh in the paint, so that is kind of a problem there. So, and I think you're getting a little bit of a discounted line there actually on Loyola Maryland. So that's the way I would look there. The other game in this conference is the 7-10 matchup, Holy Cross and Lafayette. Lafayette a little bit of a bigger favorite here. I mean, they're the better team. These teams split home and home. Holy Cross won the most recent game at Holy Cross, where they were actually a 2.5-point underdog. And the game at Lafayette earlier in the season was Lafayette 5.5-point favorite. They're a 6.5-point favorite here. So actually down from 7 with juice down to 6.5. So maybe it's numbers guys coming in and just thinking this line's a little bit too high on Lafayette. I don't have a whole lot on this game. They are definitely the better team. Holy Cross is pretty bad. So Lafayette down from 7.5 to 6.5, both juiced numbers there. Again, I don't think you're really getting any value laying it with Lafayette there because the line does look slightly high. And they actually did lose the last game at Holy Cross last time they played them not that long ago. So it is actually kind of a little bit of a quick revenge spot. But a lot of times revenge, you can kind of throw it out the window in these conference tournaments. But also Holy Cross playing in Worcester, Mass. And having to go out to Pennsylvania. It's not really the easiest spot for them either. So these home teams, of course, they have a little bit of the home advantage there because they're actually hosting these games. So I don't know which way I would even lean in that game, man. It's tough to even give a lean in that one. And the Horizon tournament is also starting. So by the way, I forgot to mention the Atlantic Sun and the Horizon, they don't have a fixed bracket layout in their tournament, so they actually reseed every round, which I think the Horizon might be new to doing that. I don't know if the A-Sun is or not. But so basically what that means is that out of all the teams that advance, the lowest seed that advances faces the highest seed that advances from the prior round. So in like the A-Sun, like Lipscomb won last night. They're the 1 seed. So Lipscomb is going to face the lowest seed that advanced out of those, which was probably, what was it, Queens, the 5 seed? Or no, Queens was the 6, I think, right? They won against Florida Gulf Coast. I don't even know, but those teams aren't playing tonight. But I'm just saying, I think Lipscomb will get Queens, I believe, because of that structure. So they don't get to face the team that was in the 4-5 matchup, which was Jacksonville. So I think Jacksonville is going to North Alabama, who's the 2 seed who won as well. But anyway, Horizon, we got some pretty big mismatches here, man. Detroit Mercy and Northern Kentucky here. I mean, this is Detroit Mercy and Green Bay. Those 2 teams are significantly worse than the rest of the teams in this Horizon League, man. Even though the Horizon, a lot of the teams, like most of the other teams are all pretty much packed in there and can kind of beat each other on any given night. I don't know if I would say that about Northern Kentucky and Detroit Mercy, Detroit Mercy, Green Bay. And then the rest of these teams, these 2 teams are bad, man, especially Green Bay. So what we have here is the bottom half of these teams, I think, are all playing tonight. So we got, I don't even know what this is. What is this? Northern Kentucky is actually the 6 in the conference, it looks like, and Detroit Mercy is the 11 or the 10. I don't even know. What is that? The 10? I don't know how this conference is structured, man. It's a very weird structure, but whatever. Northern Kentucky, they're playing Detroit Mercy. And they actually lost at Detroit Mercy when they played them earlier this year. I believe they split the season series, yeah. So they lost to them, and then they more recently beat them. But they were a huge favorite. Or no, they more recently lost to them, excuse me. They were a big favorite at Detroit Mercy, man. And they lost that game. Pretty ridiculous. And at home, Northern Kentucky was a 13.5-point favorite. And now most recently they lost to Detroit Mercy, which I don't know how you lose to them. They were a 7.5-point road favorite in this one, and they lost the game. Northern Kentucky had a horrific shooting game in this game. 30.2 from the field, 14.8 from 3. That's not going to happen again, man. Detroit Mercy didn't shoot that great either, but that's kind of more to be expected. That was a major outlier of a horrible shooting performance from Northern Kentucky. Not that they're a great shooting team, really, but they are at home here. In this Horizon tournament, the home team is hosting in these rounds, so they're back at home, and we're actually getting a price that's a little bit shorter than what it was in that other one. So for me, I would lean to Northern Kentucky or pass the game here. Detroit Mercy is not good. Northern Kentucky up from 11.5 to now 13, so it is creeping back up to that number. So you wanted to get this a little bit lower than the 13.5 probably. 72% of the cash on them, but 50% of tickets evenly split. But again, yeah, I think Detroit Mercy is going to be the right side there. Not Detroit Mercy, Northern Kentucky. I would lay the points with Northern Kentucky on that one. I can't even talk today. Yeah, Northern Kentucky would be the way that I lean in that game. And then Green Bay at Oakland, I would say kind of similar, although I don't think Oakland lost to Green Bay. I think they season swept them, but they literally just played at Green Bay, and they only beat them by 3 points in overtime. So this Green Bay team was actually winning most of the game against Oakland, had a big lead in the second half, took them into overtime as 9.5-point underdogs, and Oakland just barely escaped, and now they have to turn around and play again. Although some things kind of worry me here, which is that Oakland, how did they almost lose this game? They dominated the rebound battle. They had really good shooting numbers in the game, and they almost lost the game. Well, what happened here? Although, actually, if you look, I believe there was a huge free throw discrepancy. Was there? No, not really. I don't know what I was thinking. Oakland shot really badly from the free throw line. They had way more attempts and missed a bunch of them. So that's kind of the reason why. A lot of their possessions, they got to the free throw line and came up empty because they couldn't hit the free throws. That was basically what happened in that game. But because Oakland had that real scare at Green Bay, now they're turning around. They're coming back home, 11.5-point favorite, where they already won at home against Green Bay earlier this year as well, which I think was a much easier game for them. But they won by 14 as 14.5-point favorites. And now we're looking at Oakland being an 11-point favorite in this game. Actually, 11.5 down to 10 with juice. 67% of tickets on them, 63% of the cash coming in on Green Bay. But I don't think I agree with that. I think I would look to Oakland or pass the game because Oakland just almost lost to this Green Bay team in the last game of the season, which was senior day for Green Bay. So Green Bay really got up for that game. I think you're actually getting a little bit of a discounted line unless there are injuries. I don't follow these teams, so I don't know if they're personnel issues. I don't really understand why the line is as short as it is there on Oakland. But again, Oakland coming off a scare, I think they're going to be the team that has the adjustments to make here. Maybe you can't fix poor free throw shooting, but in one game to another, but still, I don't agree with the market read on that one. I think it would be Oakland or you pass the game in that one. North Carolina is at Virginia Tech, and we know North Carolina. I'm going to talk about these teams that are on the bubble, man. I actually have North Carolina as the last team in the first four in my bracket now, with Texas and Nebraska falling out. So North Carolina, they got to keep winning, but they're on this nice run of 5 wins in a row, but not really against any impressive teams here. The ACC is just totally unimpressive. But now they got to go on the road. They've won most of these games at home. They got to go on the road to Virginia Tech, and up next they have their huge rivalry game against Duke. But I can see this going two ways, man. North Carolina, they know that they can't afford to lose, so I don't think they can afford to be looking ahead to Duke here. I don't know if they still will be at all, though, and that's kind of the concern. Will they be looking ahead to Duke still? Maybe. So that's the concern. You really got to be focused for this if you're North Carolina, man, because you can't afford to lose to this Virginia Tech team, who's not a good team this year, below 500. And Virginia Tech is probably going to want to play spoiler here. They're at home. It's their final home game. It is senior day for them. They got a name team coming into their place in North Carolina. So I would lean to the Virginia Tech side plus the points. The good thing about that also is that North Carolina, the pressure is going to be on them. When you have pressure on a team that's laying a lot of points, you really do tend to want to look to go against them. And North Carolina, they can certainly win this game without covering. So, they can get through this game. They can win the game and not cover. So I would lean to Virginia Tech in this game because North Carolina, they're not going to be focused on, we need to cover this spread. They're going to be focused on, we got to just win this game. And we have Duke up next. So 75% of tickets, 99% of the cash on UNC, but I don't know if that cash percentage is really accurate. North Carolina down from 8.5 to 8. Again, I would lean to taking the points of Virginia Tech in that one. None of these are plays for me, though. St. Louis is at Dayton. St. Louis coming off a big win over Loyola Chicago, they absolutely stomped Loyola Chicago by 31 points. They might be feeling a bit high on themselves after that, man. And it was in revenge as well. Huge game for them. Although this is also going to be revenge, and this is road revenge as they lost at home to Dayton. But are they going to be able to carry that momentum into this game after that just absolute destruction of Loyola Chicago? I don't know. And Dayton coming off a much easier win over Richmond. They're just kind of rolling along, kind of easy. And now they got a final home game here. This is their senior day, but they do have VCU up next, which is a big game as well. But final home game, senior night, you got to think they're going to show up here. I think both teams are showing up. Hard to gauge. These teams are both right there in the pack here, man. So there are seeding implications for the A10 here. Like, I think the two teams that come out in the 3 and 4 spots here or whatever are going to have buys. So I think these teams are they are fighting for that as well. Dayton, by the way, that game, I should mention, this was actually a double overtime game. So Dayton actually almost lost as 14.5-point favorites. They almost lost to Richmond. So that's a scare, man. And that might refocus Dayton. I mean, I think they got caught. I think maybe they were just looking ahead to this. So you might get a bit of a bounce back focus spot from Dayton here. I lean to Dayton if you force my hand on that one. Dayton's sitting at a 6-point favorite. 83% of tickets, 91% of the cash on them. I think the situation sets up a little bit more advantageously for them than it does for St. Louis, who's just feeling probably pretty high off of that just crazy win. That just total dismantling of Loyola Chicago. VCU, I mean, they're coming off some pretty satisfying wins as well. They just crushed Davidson by 24 points. Now they got to go out to face Duquesne, and they got a big game up next against Dayton, who they did already beat once, but that's a big game, final home game. Dayton can't catch up to them in the standings, but still VCU, yeah, they're atop the standings right now, but they do have to worry about George Mason still being behind them. If they care about the 1 seed, though, I don't know that you really care that much about the 1 seed because I think the A10 tournament is a neutral location tournament, and there's not that much of a difference between the 1 and 2. I don't think. I think they both get the same amount of buys. So it is possible that VCU just kind of, it looks like one of those spots where maybe they lapse and focus a little bit coming into this game against Duquesne. But Duquesne just destroyed George Mason. So they're coming off a huge win as well. But this is going to be their final home game, and it is the top team in the conference coming into their place in VCU. So it's not like they're not going to be focused for this. They will be. So I would lean to taking the points with Duquesne. VCU down from 10 to 9. 74% of tickets, 77% of the cash coming in on Duquesne. I agree with where the cash and where the line is moved in that one. Creighton at Seton Hall. Creighton just came off a pretty ugly loss at Xavier. Xavier really needed that. Xavier really on a run right now, going all out to try to get into the tournament. I actually have them in the first 4 right now. Now it is a second straight road game for Creighton, but this Seton Hall team is bad, man. I know Creighton likes to play fast. I know Creighton already beat Seton Hall at home where they were able to play fast. Seton Hall is going to try to ugly this game up and slow it down at home, but I think this is a little bit of a bounce back spot for Creighton here, man. And Seton Hall is coming off a big game against St. John's where they actually played pretty competitively. They played competitively a few games in a row here. Xavier, Villanova, St. John's. It is senior night now for Seton Hall, though, so do I really want to fade them in this spot? No, I don't. But they were 19.5-point underdogs against St. John's, and they played pretty close, man. They were within 5 points with 4 minutes left in this game, so they played a tight game against the St. John's team, and I think was probably just feeling, we're going to get in and get out here. St. John's probably just didn't really focus on them. So I would lean to Creighton in this game, laying the points. They are the way better team, but certainly not going to be a play for me. They're sitting as a 10-point favorite. 55% of tickets, 65% of the cash coming in on Seton Hall. If you do like Seton Hall, again, they do slow the game down, play ugly at home, which is more conducive to covering large underdog numbers at home. So at least you do have that going for you. Other than that, I don't really know what else to say, man. And then, that's about it. And it's senior night for Seton Hall, so they may still be focused for that reason. Miami, Ohio is at Buffalo, which normally you wouldn't think that's a big game. I mean, it really isn't, but Miami, Ohio just lost at Ohio. That was a big game for them. They lost that game, and now this is a second straight road game before they finish the season with their senior night against Ball State, although who cares about Ball State, really, but could just be a little bit of a hangover spot maybe for Miami, Ohio there. Buffalo, though, I think they're coming off a pretty big performance as well, if I remember correctly. Yeah, they just beat Toledo, so they're coming off a big win too, but it is now their senior night, so I would still probably lean to the Buffalo side or not play it. I mean, I'm not playing it, but Miami, Ohio, 8.5, up from 8.5 to 8.5 with juice, though. 75% of tickets, 92% of the cash coming in on Miami, Ohio. I don't really agree with the market read on that one. I would probably take the points with Buffalo or leave it alone. Kent State, coming off that big game against Akron, man. They played pretty tough against Akron. This is a big game. Kent State was winning this game late in the game, man, and they fell just short. Tough. This is going to be a tough spot for Kent State, man. I mean, they had Akron on the ropes. Akron, the best team in this conference. Now Kent State off of that. They played Miami, Ohio tough. Then Toledo, beating them, crushing them by 40 points. Then losing that close game, blowing the game against Akron. Now they're going to play Western Michigan, who I believe they already beat at home, right? If I'm not mistaken, I believe they did. No, excuse me, they lost at home by 11 points, so it's actually road revenge for them, but I think road revenge gets thrown out the window in a spot like this, man. They're playing a fourth road game in the last 5 games, and they have their senior night up next against Eastern Michigan. This is a tough spot for them, man. Western Michigan, this is going to be their senior night. They get Kent State coming into their place. They're on a nice little run, winning 4 of the last 5 games, although a couple of them actually against good teams, against Ohio. They caught Ohio in a bad spot, and I think I actually played them in that game against Ohio, and they beat Miami, Ohio, which isn't a bad game either. So I do like Western Michigan in this game, man, and this is almost a play for me. And Kent State, by the way, they play more defensively than offensively. So Kent State, if you do like the idea of fading them here, which I agree with fading them here, although the line is up from 6.5 to 7, so I'd be a little worried about it, about fading the market move there, but you're getting extra value on Western Michigan, I guess, if you're taking the 7. And Kent State, again, they play more of a slower pace game, although I think Western Michigan also does. I'll look in a second. Kent State, they don't score very well, and they play really good defense. I can look real quick and see what Ken Bum has this line at 8. So it is a little bit high. So maybe the numbers guys are the guys coming in and driving this up, because Western Michigan really isn't a very good team. They actually play a little bit faster. And they aren't really good on either side of the ball, so I don't know, man. I mean, Western Michigan, I did play them in that one spot. This does look like a spot where the spot would indicate that you should play Western Michigan or leave the game alone here. That is the way I would look, especially if this line gets a little bit higher. If you get to 7.5 on that, it definitely becomes a consideration there as far as Western Michigan. I haven't played it. I don't think I'm going to play it, but that is the way that I would lean. And Kent State, again, like I said, they don't score that well, so that's not great for a team that is going to be a road favorite, and they like to play slow. Western Michigan might be able to speed it up a little bit, throw Kent State out of their element a little bit. And Kent State, again, they play way better on the defensive side than offensive side, which is not really the recipe for laying points on the road. All right, let's keep going here. Akron is coming off that big game where they beat Kent State, and they got their senior night up next against Buffalo, although Buffalo, not a good team, and Akron already killed that Buffalo team. They're going to Toledo, though, and this is a third road game in 4 games. Not an easy spot for them, man. They did already beat Toledo once at home. Coming off that big win over Kent State, Akron clinched the conference as well. They clinched the 1 seed in the MAC, so they really don't have anything to play for here, in my opinion. And Toledo, maybe I should be playing Toledo here. Toledo is coming off a couple of ugly losses. They lost, last time they played on this floor, they had a really horrendous loss to Bowling Green, where Toledo was a 7.5-point favorite in that game. And then went out on the road and they lost to Kent State by 40 points and then lost to Buffalo by 13. And Toledo was a 7.5-point favorite in that game. You know what? I think I'm convincing myself to play Toledo in this game, although this is not their senior night. Their senior night is up next, but I mean, this is Akron coming into their place, so you know Toledo's going to want to do something here. Akron down from 6 to 5, 74% of tickets on 89% of the cash coming in Toledo. I think I might add a play here. Let me look at this. Akron, we know they like to play super fast. They are super lucky at 51 in luck index, so Kim Bum has them very high in the luck index. Their defense is mediocre, very good offense. But again, they really don't have a whole lot to play for here. He's got this line at 8, though, so that gives me a little bit of hesitation. But, oh, man, the spot looks really good. Toledo is 9th in luck index, though, so they're very, very lucky as well. They're actually horrific defensively, almost one of the worst in the country. They could definitely score, and they like to play fast. So they're actually they profile similar to Akron. I'm going to leave the game alone. I'm not going to play it, but, man, that looks like a good situational angle to take Toledo there. But and Akron, again, they have nothing to play for, but I don't think you're getting a lot of line value there, in my opinion, to be honest there. So I'll just stay away, but, man, that is tempting to play Toledo in that one. All right. I'm like so tempted to do it. I kind of still want to be like, fuck you, Ken Palm, and just still do it. Charles, what's up, my man? Thanks for hanging out on the later morning show here. But, yeah, again, that would absolutely be you'd take the points with Toledo or pass the game. And it looks way too easy to lay the points with Akron. But, again, like I just said, Akron has nothing to play for. I would really prefer it if Toledo was like a slow-paced defensive team there, which they are not at all. Texas is at Mississippi State, and, man, Texas, they need to win, man. I mean, they've lost 6 of their last 7 games, and they're still a bubble team right now. I have them in the first 4 out right now in my bracketology. This is crazy, man, and they're kind of thriving on their name recognition as well because that gives them a boost because the committee's going to be like, well, Texas has a huge fan base. Put them in. If there's that's like a thing that might get them over the hump. But man, they lost to South Carolina. It's horrific loss there. I thought they were in a nice bounce back spot against Arkansas, and they should have at least covered that game for me, and they wound up losing the game in overtime. That was a big bubble matchup. And then they had another bubble matchup right after that, and they lost again to Georgia. Texas cannot afford any more losses, man. And now they're going on the road to Mississippi State. They're going to be the underdog here, a pretty big underdog. So they're going to be getting a lot of points. Mississippi State coming off an easy win over LSU, though. And this is senior night, so I don't think Mississippi State's going to not show up for this game. I think they're going to want to spoil Texas's season because, it's Texas. They're a big-name team, so I think you would want nothing more than to do that. But Texas, they're going to be the more motivated team here. They really need this thing to make sure that they're not going to get eliminated from tournament contention here. And they're getting a bunch of points. So I would take the points with Texas in this game or not play it. I'm not playing it. It's not a very strong situation, in my opinion. 85% of tickets, 80% of the cash on Mississippi State. So they are public with less of the cash on them. No, I love Ken Baum, actually. He's the best. He's got the best college basketball analytics site out there, man. But yeah, I would lean to taking the points with Texas just because they're in such dire straits here. Skip it. And then what else we got? We got more Horizon League tournament action here with IUPUI. IU Indianapolis is at Wright State. And IUPUI just beat Wright State. But that was kind of a weird spot because that was senior night for IUPUI. I think they got up for that game. Wright State was a 3.5-point favorite in that one. IUPUI played a good game. Took the game over late in the game and won the game. Even though Wright State actually had a decent shooting performance in that game, IUPUI actually won the rebound battle. So that kind of concerns me that IUPUI might actually be the better of the rebounding teams here. IUPUI did lose, I believe, at Wright State earlier. Yeah, they lost by 18 at Wright State earlier this year. Wright State was a 9.5-point favorite in that one. And Wright State had a complete handle on this game, man. Wright State dominated this game, but Wright State shot ridiculously in this game. 63% from the field, 60% from three-point range. They're not going to do that again. Wright State did win the rebound battle as well, though, so they completely dominated this game. Some outlier shooting percentages there on the side of Wright State, though, but now that Wright State just lost, just like I said with that Green Bay matchup, Wright State just lost to IUPUI. Now they're playing them again, and they get them back at home. And I think you're actually getting a little bit of line value in this game. I don't know, it's up to 9.5 now, so it's the same as it was when Wright State was at home earlier this year. But I would lean to Wright State or pass this game. They are the better of these two teams. People might see that, IUPUI just beat Wright State, and now they're playing them again, and all you need to do is get them to come within 9 here. It looks like maybe there's some value there. I wouldn't agree. And again, like I said, this is a home game. These home teams are hosting these games in the Horizon. Wright State up from 9-9 with juice, 75% of tickets, 99% of the cash. And again, like I said before, a lot of times you do want to look to the better of the two teams when it comes to it being the tournament Because if both teams are going to be focused, a lot of times the better team is going to win out. I mean, of course, they have the advantage of being the better team. So Baylor is at TCU. Baylor, you could consider this to be a bubble game, I guess, with TCU definitely a bit far on the outside looking in. Baylor went on a bad stretch, and they may have kind of turned it around with that win over Oklahoma State, but now they do have to go to TCU. But they did lose at home to TCU already, so this is road revenge for Baylor. Even though they do have Houston up next, they can't really afford to lose this game, and I think the fact that they lost to TCU at home is going to keep them focused here. TCU pulled off that upset against them. TCU, this is their senior night, though, so they're going to be focused as well, and I think even if they know they're not going to make the tournament, this is a Texas rivalry, and at the very least, I think they are going to want to be focused on Baylor. Baylor's laying 3.5 on the road. It does look a little bit easy to try to take Baylor to lay that short number there. 50% of tickets on them, 89% of the cash coming in on TCU, though. So the market read is on TCU. I mean, again, it is senior night for them, but Baylor, it being a road revenge spot, and Baylor, still needing to win to get into the tournament as well, although I think they're feeling a little bit safer, though. They've been pretty much on the safe side of being in the tournament this whole time, and I think even if they lose this game, I think maybe they still will be, but you never know what's going to happen with all these bubble stealers and whatever, so you'd prefer to win that game, man. That's what I will say there. And Villanova, probably considered to be a bubble team as well. I think they're on the outside looking in, but they've won 3 games in a row, a big win over Butler. This is their final regular season game. They're going to Georgetown now, though, and Georgetown, did they play them this year? I don't know if they did. They did. They actually lost at home to Georgetown. So this is road revenge for Villanova, but it is also senior night for Georgetown, I believe. Yeah, it is. Excuse me. They have one more game left, but this is their last home game. And Georgetown is on a 3-game skid, but losing to good teams, Creighton, Connecticut, Marquette. So I don't know what I would think about this game either. Villanova does have a lot of action coming in on them. Those strong market reads on Villanova, up from 3.5 to 5 with juice. 92% of tickets coming in on them, 92% of the cash, and 55% of tickets wanting to take the points with Georgetown, as Villanova does play slow, ugly. I don't know that I would want to lay this many points with Villanova on the road, man, but Villanova, I mean, they may be in a bit more of a motivated spot there, even though it is senior night for Georgetown. So we'll see what happens there. And then we have this ugly Sun Belt tournament game between the Louisiana teams in UL Monroe and formerly UL Lafayette, who's now just called Louisiana. We're the University of Louisiana, man. This matchup, I don't even know, man. Louisiana, I believe they swept the season series because UL Monroe is terrible. They beat them at home by only 3 and then quickly turned around and beat them on the road by 5. So close games. But Louisiana is definitely the better of these two teams, but I don't know by how much. Both of these teams are bad. This is the 11 versus the 14. And again, this is a neutral site game at Pensacola, Florida. I don't want to do anything with this game. I don't really have much of a read on it. But UL Monroe is a really bad team, though. I don't know. Both teams are coming off some recent losses, I believe, to some of the better teams. I don't have a whole lot of an angle here at all. Lafayette sitting at a 5.5-point favorite, but 50% of tickets, 69% of the cash coming in on UL Monroe. So the cash percentage is coming in on the UL Monroe side. I don't know, man. I mean, both of these teams are bad. I don't even know if I would have a lean on that game at all. But let's get to my actual plays. I don't want this video to be that long. We might be able to get it in under an hour if I do this. We don't have too many games left, but I'm on 4 of these late games. I told you we're going to have late action here, man. First game up, I'm going to play Texas A&M plus the points, plus 5.5, baby. I'm fading Auburn. Why? Do I want to die? Do I want to just lose money here? No, I don't. I think this is a good spot. The market looks like it's in agreement. Auburn down from 6 to 4.5 with juice. Trying to avoid this minefield here, man, and pick what I think are the best spots. 80% of tickets, only 62% of the cash coming in on Auburn. And all of my plays are going to be in regular season action, by the way. They're all somewhat bigger conferences. But Auburn, they're public with less of the tickets on them, and the line is moving down. I think you could still get 5.5 on this right now, or 5. Not a huge difference between those two. I think this is a bad spot for Auburn, dude. They just beat Kentucky on the road. I know Kentucky, not really that great this year, but still, that's Kentucky. It's a big name. And Auburn, they have a horrible history at Rupp Arena, man. As I told you, Auburn had won there once in the last, 37 years or something like that, and they got that win. That's a big win. Now it's a second straight road game at Texas A&M. They haven't played them this year, I don't think so. I don't know, man. I don't know if they're really going to be focused on this Texas A&M team that's really on kind of a slide. And what does Auburn have next? Oh, yeah, they have the rematch against Alabama, even though, yeah, they already beat Alabama. But that's a huge Alabama rivalry game, and it's senior day for Auburn. So if they're going to overlook one of these remaining games, you know it's going to be this one. And Auburn pretty much has already clinched the SEC. They have a 3-game lead over Florida and Alabama, so I think they've already clinched it. So what else can you even do here? I think they have, right? Let me see. I don't even know if I see it. Sometimes I see it in the news articles. They've clinched at least a share of the SEC regular season title. I don't really understand how any team can catch them, though. If all the teams are 3 games behind them, how can any team catch them if they only have 2 games left? I don't really understand that. But yeah, Auburn's sitting really pretty atop the conference. They don't really need this game. I mean, Texas A&M doesn't technically need it, but this is a much bigger game for Texas A&M. This is senior night for them. They've lost 4 games in a row, and they've lost 2 straight home games to Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee's a good team, though. And then to Vandy, who they're going to be in the tournament, but that's kind of an ugly loss as a favorite. It was a better spot for Vandy, but that does mean the last time A&M was on this floor, they got upset as a 7.5-point favorite. Then they went out and lost to Florida, too. So I think this is a big bounce-back spot for Texas A&M here, man. It looks like it is. And the other advantage we get here is that Auburn likes to play pretty fast. Texas A&M likes to slow the game way down and play defense, and that's the profile that you want, getting points at home like this, plus it being a really good spot for them. It being senior night, you got the number 1 team in the country coming into your place on senior night, man. You're going to step up for this game. I believe Ken Baum, I think, has this at around a 6-point line or so. So not a whole lot to see there. I mean, he has Texas A&M basically appropriately ranked, but they're a top 10 defense, man. So this is Texas A&M, actually, technically, according to Ken Baum, is the slightly better defense here. So you got that. You got a slow-down team. That's what you like to see, man. Texas A&M, the public doesn't like Texas A&M because they really have scoring droughts, and their offense is super ugly. They don't shoot that well. But they're a physical defensive team, man. That is their profile, and this is the type of game where you want to look to play them as a home underdog like this in a really good spot. So give me Texas A&M plus the points there. Next up, BYU, number 23 at number 10, Iowa State. I call out the rankings usually. Number 1, Auburn, and number 22, Texas A&M. Number 23, BYU is at number 10, Iowa State. BYU, they're putting themselves in the rankings, man. They were a bubble team not that long ago. Now they've won 6 games in a row. They're just completely on a roll right now. But now they got to go to Ames, Iowa, man. That's a different animal, different story. BYU, they're going to make the tournament at this point. There's no way they're going to not make the tournament, so they don't have to worry about that anymore. They've gone on this ridiculous run. They're safe at this point. BYU is new to the Big 12, and having to go to Ames, Iowa, I mean, that's not easy. That's going to be a site that they're not familiar with playing in, man, and they have a strong home court advantage. Iowa State was on a bit of a slide here, which I'll talk about in a second, but they did bounce back with a big win over Arizona. So, yeah, they are coming off a big win, but BYU is also a big game, man. And Iowa State, I don't know if they care about, we want to get up to the 2 seed in the tournament. I don't think that's a huge motivating factor, but still, Iowa State, this is a big game because it's senior night and against a ranked BYU team, man. I mean, that's going to motivate you, even if you are coming off a big win over Arizona. Plus, Iowa State had lost a couple of games in a row prior to that. And the other thing I will point out, Iowa State, I believe they're now 13-1 on this floor this year. So they're very, very good on this floor. They almost never lose. And I believe the only game they lost was this very strange loss at home to Kansas State, which I don't know what to say about that. It was sandwiched in between Arizona and Kansas at the very least. But the other thing you could say is that was in the midst of Iowa State having injury issues, man. They were without Mumsilovich in some of those games. He's kind of their big man. He's a key component. And these couple of games where they lost these other games, they had some other injury issues they were dealing with Gilbert, who's their best scorer, and Jones, who was their 6th man. Both of those games are out. Both of those guys were out. Or Jones, I think, might start sometimes too. I forget. But those guys are out. But now all 3 of those guys are back. All 3 of those guys are back. And that Arizona game was the first time all 3 of those guys were back in the lineup. And Iowa State, with those 3 guys all playing, all in the lineup, this tells you how many games they've been without at least one of those guys. in games where Iowa State has had all three of those guys playing, they only have one loss, and it's this 2-point loss to Auburn way back early in the season. So with those three guys all playing, Iowa State has not lost a game except for that game against Auburn that they almost won. That is a crazy statistic. So you know what I'm saying in this game. This is not a bet for me, but it would be Iowa State or pass. But Iowa State, I mean, I don't know if you're getting much value anymore. They're up from 7 to 9.5 here. And the public doesn't seem to want Iowa State. It looks like BYU's a public underdog. 61% of tickets, only 57% of the cash coming in on them. So the public thinks there's value in taking the points with BYU. Oh, they're a ranked team. BYU is on fire right now, having won a bunch of games in a row. Iowa State looks ugly, having dropped all these recent games. But again, I just told you, it was because of the injuries. Iowa State, with those three guys playing and on this home floor, I mean, they're undefeated when they've had all three of those guys playing and they've played on this home floor. So the question is the line a little bit too high now? Maybe it is with the 9.5, but I would only lay it with Iowa State in this game. I would not look to take the points with BYU in that one. West Virginia, I mean, they're kind of a bubble team right now. They got to get into the tournament. They're in a tough spot, man. 3 road games in the last 4 games, playing 2 straight on the road in elevation, and they did not handle elevation well at BYU. I took West Virginia at plus, 10.5 points in that game, and they still couldn't even cover that. Terrible offensive performance. I thought it was a good spot to take them because they're a good defensive team. BYU was coming off some big win, and it did not happen. Now they're going to turn around. Maybe it'll help that they're used to playing in elevation now, and they have a second straight game in elevation, but this is not a familiar experience to West Virginia, man. I mean, these teams are new to the Big 12. West Virginia not used to playing in elevation. Again, though, West Virginia is going to be motivated here. They got to be motivated because they're on the bubble right now. I have them in the round of 64, but man, I mean, they got to not lose this game against Utah. Utah's up from 3 to 3.5 with juice. 64% of tickets on them. 55% of the cash coming in on West Virginia, though. So the cash percentage is coming in on them. I mean, I would probably still agree with that because West Virginia may have adjusted to the elevation. They have more to play for than Utah does. They're getting points again. So you got a motivated team that's a good defensive team in West Virginia getting points. Utah's not as good as BYU. Man, it's tough, though. And Utah laying points, even though they're the team with the worst record there. So, yeah, it looks like kind of a mess there. And then SMU, SMU, they're technically still a bubble team, but I don't think they're going to make it at this point, man. I mean, they've had too many losses here. Although losing at Stanford, losing to Clemson, and losing to Wake, I mean, those aren't really that horrific. They got to win this game now. Now they're back at home. They lost their last home game to Clemson. They just went out to the Pacific Coast. Now they're back home for senior night against Syracuse. They got to take care of business here, man. But they're laying a lot of points here. Syracuse really doesn't have a whole lot to play for, and they're coming off this barn burner overtime game against Virginia Tech. Huge game there. Syracuse fell short as an underdog in that game at Virginia Tech, and now they're playing a third road game in the last 4 games, so it is a tough spot for them, and they're going to a place that they're not familiar with playing with, having to go to Dallas to face SMU. So for all those reasons, I would lean to SMU, but the market read looks against it. They're down from 13 to 12.5, 82% of tickets, only 74% of the cash on them, so the market read makes SMU look like a public favorite, and they're not getting the money. I don't know what else to say about that, man. But I think SMU has to have more motivation there. But are they going to be able to cover that larger number? Who knows? Colorado State and San Jose State. Colorado State already went into San Jose State and beat them by 20 points. So this is road revenge for San Jose State. And Colorado State's coming off absolutely blasting Utah State. Huge win by 27 points over Utah State. Giant win. And they got Boise up next. So, yeah, this is a sandwich spot. Those are 2 much better teams than San Jose State, and San Jose State has road revenge. So normally I would look at this and say, yeah, I mean, in the middle of the regular season, you want to take San Jose State, but Colorado State is the way better team, and this is senior night for them, so I don't know that they're really going to not show up focused, but they're laying a ton of points, so I would still lean to taking the points with San Jose State. The other problem here is, though, that the line is like a little bit higher than you'd expect it to be. I think the line, based on what Colorado State was favored by in that previous game, let me see here. Colorado State's up from 13.5 to 15.5 in this game with juice. Only 60% of tickets and only 53% of the cash. So the cash percentage looks like it's against Colorado State here. I agree with taking the points with San Jose State, but the problem is I think San Jose State must have some like injury issues or something, because Colorado State, they're only a 3.5 point favorite in that game on the road at San Jose State, and now they're up to like 15 and a half. That is a huge line move, man, even though I think Colorado State has turned out to be better than what we thought they were, but that is a huge shift in the line, man. I think it's got to be because there are injuries. San Jose State has definitely been dealing with injuries. I don't know. I haven't really looked into it enough. I just decided I wasn't going to play this game anyway, but for me, I still think it would be taking the points with San Jose State or pass, just because it's such a sandwich spot for Colorado State. Next up is a play for me, and that's Nevada on the money line on CBS Sports at 9 p.m. You're going to think, why am I doing this? New Mexico, they're the best team in the Mountain West. They have a really nice looking record. And look at Nevada's horrible record here. Like, what the hell is wrong with you, man? It's basically like a pick the winner situation. Like, obviously, the public's going to look at that and say, well, obviously, it's New Mexico. But again, the books don't give money away, man. New Mexico's up from a pick 'em to a pick 'em with juice, but 56% of tickets on 64% of the cash coming in on Nevada. So it looks like there is some market indication, or there are some market indicators on the Nevada side. I agree with it, and this is a little bit less of a situational spot for me and more of a motivational spot. New Mexico does have their final home game up next against UNLV, though, and they only beat UNLV by 2, so that's kind of a big game. Against Nevada here, I believe they did already beat Nevada once. Yeah, they did beat them, but they only beat them by 1 at home. So New Mexico is a favorite. Actually, Nevada took them into overtime on New Mexico's floor, and that was with New Mexico speeding the game up. So does that mean New Mexico is going to take them seriously because of that? They might, but I still think this sets up way better for Nevada, man. And New Mexico, they're sitting atop the conference standings, man. I mean, they could fall down a little bit, but if you get one of the first, 4 seeds in this conference, I mean, yeah, it would be nice to win, the regular season title, but that's not really these teams' biggest concern. I mean, you want to get into the Mountain West tournament. You want to have a bye in the tournament. They will. So this game, I don't think matters as much for that reason. It is still technically revenge for Nevada, and they're going to Reno, man. It is a tough spot to have to go to Reno. The thing that kind of was the thing that seals this for me is that New Mexico, they have not looked good on the road in conference play, man. They beat Colorado State earlier in the season before we really knew, before Colorado State started playing better, and they beat Fresno. Who cares? Fresno sucks. They struggled at Wyoming, only beating them by 8. They actually lost at San Jose State, although it was in a bad spot between San Diego State and Boise. That was a sandwich, but they lost the game outright by 1. They only won at UNLV by 2. They did have a huge win at Utah State, which was good. They crushed Air Force, but Air Force sucks on the road. Then they lost at Boise and at San Diego State on the road. And what is the common factor amongst all the road games that they lost against San Jose State, or the game that they, I guess, didn't play that well, and I probably didn't cover at Wyoming, the game they almost lost at UNLV, and the games that they lost at Boise and at San Diego State? The common thread between all those worst road performances for New Mexico is that those teams slow the game down, and so does Nevada. So Utah State does not do that. Utah State plays fast. So these teams that play slow, when New Mexico has had to go to their home places, they have not played well. Those teams have been able to slow the game down. I think we're going to see that here too. I think it's a line where the books are not giving free money away here, man. Playing at Reno is not an easy thing to do, even though I know Nevada's been a little bit down this year. They haven't been that dominant at home this year. But this is Nevada's senior night with the top team in the conference coming in, and Nevada's coming off an ugly loss over UNLV. New Mexico just blasted Air Force in the last game. Like, who cares? Nevada coming off a real ugly loss in that UNLV rivalry game, though. They had won the home game, so that was a big win for UNLV, which maybe I'll mention in a second. But Nevada, I think this is going to be a big one for them, man. And as I said, this is a huge pacing disparity here. New Mexico is the 4th fastest team in the country. Ken Bum also has them 165th in luck, so they're a bit luckier. He's got Nevada 346th in both luck and tempo, so he has them as one of the least lucky teams and one of the slowest teams in the nation. And they're still top 100 in both offense and defense. So even though I think New Mexico also is, that's still pretty good for Nevada, man. I mean, that means Nevada can be competitive in this game. Ken Bum has this game as a 1-point game, I think one way or the other. I forget which, but for all those reasons, yeah, I'm going to play Nevada. We got a big luck disparity here. We got a big tempo disparity, and it's senior night for Nevada, and the line looks misleading. So all those things lead up to that being a play on Nevada for me. Indiana's at Oregon. I mean, this is another bubble game here. We're going to go over an hour here, unfortunately. Indiana, I mean, they've put themselves in not only in the picture, but I actually have them in the round of 64 now because so many of the other bubble teams have been taking bad losses. So Indiana's probably feeling pretty good about themselves now. They just won on the road at Washington, too. Now they have a second straight road game going to Eugene, Oregon. That's an unfamiliar venue, man. And they got Ohio State to finish the season, which they actually already won at Ohio State. But still, that's a big game, hosting Ohio State in that kind of bubble matchup. So if there's going to be kind of a down spot for Indiana, it might be this, even though I know Oregon is a good team. They're a tournament team. Indiana probably feeling a little bit secure now. They're secure in themselves, man. Oregon has righted the ship, and they've won 5 games in a row. Just beat USC. Now this is their final home game, man. This is senior night for Oregon. I don't think they're going to overlook Indiana coming into their place. So I lean to Oregon in this game. Even though, yeah, Indiana, they are still technically a bubble team, so they do still need to be motivated here. Oregon's up from 6 to 7, so the market indicators look to be in agreement with me. 81% of tickets, 97% of the cash coming in on them. Again, that is the side that I would agree with in that game, but that is certainly not a play for me. Let's keep going, man. Let's see here. Wyoming, I think, is in a bad spot at Fresno. Wyoming, they just lost on senior night. They played San Diego State to within 3 points. They kept it close, had a game where I think I played Wyoming in this game. I might have. I forget. Did I? I think maybe I did because I think San Diego State was in a bad spot. Wyoming was able to do what they do, slow the game down, stay in the game. Now coming off of that, they got to go on the road to Fresno, who they already beat by 11 at home. Yeah, I think that's not a game where Wyoming's really going to be focused. Fresno, they're a bad team, but this is their final home game. It is their senior night, but they're coming off a big game against Boise, too, man. But they were in this game. They were winning this game in the final couple minutes, so I don't think I really want to play Fresno either. That was a game where they were 16.5-point underdogs, and they almost pulled off the upset over Boise. So because of that, I'm just going to stay away from that game. Wyoming actually has the money coming in on them, up from 1 to 2. 50% of tickets, 80% of the cash on them. I would not want to play Wyoming in that spot, though. Looks like a bad spot for both teams. Let's see here. The next game I'm going to be on is Arkansas. I told you I'm on a bunch of these late games here, man. Oh, I think I skipped Nebraska, Ohio State. I'll go back to it. I'm on Arkansas plus the points here. This is a game where the line looks too high. It's up from 3.5 to now 7. You can actually get 7 with juice now. This line is getting out of control, man. Vandy has 57% of the cash on them, 53% of tickets coming in on Arkansas. I mean, the public is maybe going to look at this and think, yeah, I'm going to take the points with Arkansas, but I don't know that they're wrong in this one because you're getting Arkansas as an underdog in a spot where they got to be heavily motivated here, man. And Vandy, they're much more secure. Even though both these teams are bubble teams, Vandy is much more secure in their tournament berth right now, and they're laying a bunch of points, so they don't even need to win this game. They can win this game and not cover, I should say. And now, part of the reason for this line move is not because of heavy money coming in on Vandy, even though it looks like some money is coming in on them, and I don't agree with it. But one of the issues here is that Arkansas is still without their big man, and they thought he might come back in this game. That is, what's the guy's name? I can't even remember his name. He's one of their best players, though. But they've been without him for 3 games in a row, I think. That is Adu Tiero. So this guy, they're going to be without him again in this game. He's got injury issues. But again, he's missed the last couple of games for Arkansas. And they were able to beat Texas without him. And I think he might have not played in this Missouri game either. So they've had this guy Brazil filling in for him, and he's actually been pretty good. Oh, no, excuse me. Tiero did play in that game. He didn't do that well in that game against Missouri, though. He was not one of their biggest pieces in that game. Although, yeah, he is their best rebounder. He's not their best scorer, though. It looks like they could spread their scoring around. I don't know. I don't know the personnel that much, but that's part of the reason why the line is moving like this is because Tiero is still going to be out in this game. But Brazil has filled in decently for him there in Arkansas. this situation sets up well for them, in my opinion. They just lost horribly to South Carolina, man. That is such an unbelievably ugly loss by almost 20 points. They were getting absolutely annihilated in this game. Look at the score late in this game. They were down by more than 30 points late in this game. Everybody's just blasting Arkansas, making fun of them, making fun of Calipari. I think this is a spot where they're going to bounce back from that, man. That was ugly. They were able to, like I said, they were able to play competitively all of the games prior to that. I mean, look at this. They played Alabama close, although, again, they had Tierra in most of these games. They beat LSU, played tough against A&M, played tough against Auburn, beat Missouri, beat Texas without Tierra. Again, that was an injured player theory spot, though, if that was the first game without him, and then they kind of fell back to earth. But I think they might have overlooked South Carolina here because it was sandwiched in between all these bigger games. I think this is a spot where you got to take the points with Arkansas, man. They need this game way more, and you're not even asking them to win this game. You're only asking them to cover. Vandy is coming off 3 huge wins in a row, man. Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Missouri. They played 7 ranked teams in a row. And now, yeah, I know this is their senior night, but man, and they can win this game without covering. It's senior night for them. Sure, they're going to be motivated for that reason, I guess. But other than that, I don't see a huge motivating factor in this game. And I think the motivation has got to be on the Arkansas side here. They need the game more. Vandy has put themselves right in the tournament at this point. Man, I highly doubt they're going to miss the tournament at this point. And the other thing that you're getting here is that Arkansas is the better defensive team. I don't know how much Tierra matters as far as that's concerned, but where's Arkansas here on KenPom's rankings? He's got them only 3 ranking spots below Vandy. And yeah, I know without Tierra, you got to knock them down a little bit, but both these teams like to play fast, so that's not really a concern there. That the pacing is going to be a huge mismatch. It won't be. Arkansas is 253rd in luck, so KenPom is telling you they're better than they look. He's telling you Vandy is not as good as they look. It's 64th in luck. So Vandy is the more overrated of the two teams according to them. And yeah, Vandy, they have the better scoring offense. We know this, but Arkansas is the much better defense. He's got Arkansas top 20 in defense and Vandy all the way down to 79th in defense. So you're also getting points with the better defense in Arkansas. So I like that too. We could change this to Arkansas +7, man. I didn't play it yet because the line indicators kind of looked like the line might go up, and 7 is a key number. So I was like, yeah, I'll just wait a little bit and see what happens. I think we can get Arkansas +7 there. So that's what I'm going to do in that one. All right, let's finish this off, man. Next up, we got oh, yeah, my other play that I skipped over. I'm going to lay 5.5 with Ohio State. I think it is up to 6 now, but I like Ohio State in this spot, man. They're up from 4.5 to 6 now. 73% of tickets, 76% of the cash coming in on them. It is 6 with juice now, so you got to try to get the best number you can. I saw numbers kind of all over the place on this one. If you want to lay 6, I mean, okay. KenPom, by the way, has that Vandy game being a 3-point win, but of course, with Tierra not playing, it's got to change a little bit, but 7 is just crazy. And he has Ohio State, I believe, winning this game by about 6. So that's why you see the line moving like this. So laying anything under 7, I think, is okay in this game. And Nebraska, they are not a good road team. Yes, I know Nebraska is a bubble team. Both of these teams are bubble teams, man. And I have Ohio State 64 Nebraska. I believe I have them out. Or no, I have Ohio State in the first 4. In the last 4, excuse me. Nebraska out right now. So, yeah. Debatably, Nebraska needs this game more. Yeah, they're coming off an ugly loss against Minnesota. That was kind of a sandwich spot after that really ridiculous low-scoring game against Michigan. But now they're going out on the road, man. I don't know that I've been that impressed with Nebraska on the road. They won these games on the road out on the Pacific Coast. But, like, all the non-Pacific Coast road games that they played in conference, they've been bad in all of them. They got annihilated by Michigan State. They lost badly at Iowa. They got killed at Purdue. Lost at Maryland, lost at Wisconsin. Yeah, so, like, you know, excuse me, and they lost badly at Penn State, too. The only non-Pacific Coast road game that they won was that game against Northwestern. Other than that, they've been really, really bad in these road games, man. So I think that's an advantage for Ohio State. This is also going to be senior night for Ohio State, and Ohio State, looking at their record looks ugly, man. So people are going to look at this and think, oh, both of these teams need to win the game. I think the public might try to come in on Nebraska slightly in this game just because it looks like maybe there's value in getting points with the team that has the better record, but I don't really think so here. Again, this is a big game for both teams, and Ohio State, they're coming back home, and the thing that put this over the top for me was they just went out on the Pacific Coast. Yeah, and they went 1-1. Okay, cool. Beating USC ended their loss streak, so that's good. So that means they have some positive momentum coming back into this game. So that's good when you break a loss streak like that and you beat a team that isn't really that great. So you don't get overconfident. You just get your confidence back. But the thing that clinched this for me is that Ohio State not only lost the last 2 games when they were on this floor, they lost their last game to Northwestern 70-49 as 8.5-point favorites. That is an inexplicable loss, man. And that's what Ohio State did the last time they were on this floor. This has got to be a bounce back spot for them. You know that they're going to be focused and want to redeem themselves here. And this is a more winnable game than that Indiana game. Nebraska does at least have senior night at home up next against Iowa, which is a game they should win. So I think this game means more to Ohio State for those reasons. They got the home advantage in this game. I know that's being factored into the line, but still, I think Ohio State is also way better than you think that they are. They're at 32nd in KenPom's rankings. Nebraska, he's got 20 spots lower. He's got Nebraska kind of high in luck at 144th in luck. Both of these teams play kind of mid-tempo, so that's not really a concern. He's got Ohio State top 50 in both offense and defense. They are the better offensive team, even though Nebraska is the better defensive team. The defenses are actually, there's not much of a difference between these teams' defensive rankings, but Ohio State has a big disparity in offense, which is good when you're laying points here, man. You want the better scoring team, and that is definitely Ohio State here. And again, he has Ohio State, as I was going to say, Ohio State way down in the luck index at 319th in luck. So he's telling you they're better than they look. And Nebraska kind of right in the middle in luck at 144th, maybe slightly overrated. So yeah, give me Ohio State in that one. And then we got Arizona State and Arizona. I mean, Arizona's a huge favorite here. I don't know that we really want to talk about this game, but Arizona's coming off that ugly loss where they went to Iowa State. I mean, that was a tough spot for Arizona to have to go out there. Now this is senior night. I mean, I think they already won at Arizona State. Yeah, they did by 9. So it's technically road revenge for Arizona State. Arizona State does step up in these big rivalry games to play against their bigger brother sometimes. It is senior night for Arizona. I don't know, man. I'm not playing the game. Arizona's up from 14.5 to 17.5 with juice. 86% of tickets, only 68% of the cash in Arizona State. So it looks like the money's coming in Arizona, and they look to be an anti-public favorite. I don't know. I don't know what I would want to do in that game. And then UNLV, San Diego State. I almost laid the points with San Diego State here, man. UNLV, after beating Utah State, they somehow went on the road and beat this San Diego State team. I don't know how that happened. San Diego State was a 10.5-point favorite in that game, and UNLV got the road win. So I think this is a big road revenge spot for San Diego State. The problem is UNLV this is their senior night against one of the best teams in the Mountain West. So I don't know that UNLV is not going to show up for this, but they already beat San Diego State on the road. They have New Mexico to finish the season, and they just beat Nevada, which is their big rival. So they actually have 3 straight big games in a row, and it is possible this game is a game that they slightly overlook, maybe just because San Diego State, I don't want to say they're going to overlook it, but San Diego State, on the other hand, might be more motivated because San Diego State, I mean, after they beat New Mexico, yeah, I think I played Wyoming in this game because they beat New Mexico, and this UNLV game is a big revenge spot for them. They barely got by Wyoming for that reason. It was a sandwich spot. So that's what San Diego State just did. They do have their final home game up next, but they're not going to want to lose to UNLV, man. I mean, UNLV embarrassed them basically on their own floor. San Diego State as a big favorite losing. You don't want to lose twice to a team when they do that to you, man. Even though San Diego State, yeah, I mean, they were coming off some bigger wins there. They are now facing, I don't know where my mind is right now. They are now playing a 3rd road game in 4 games is what I was going to say. So that is a somewhat difficult spot. So that's just kind of what keeps me off of this a little bit. But I would lean to San Diego State. They're laying 2.5, although the money looks like it's coming in against them. Down to 2.5 with reduced juice. 64% of tickets on them, 69% of the cash. I don't know, man. I don't know what I would want to do. Well, I do know what I would want to do. I'd want to lay the points with San Diego State there, but the market read looks against it, so I don't know. Let's move over to NHL here. Before I get out of here, well, we got NHL and NBA today. A big NHL slate. I hate Tuesdays, man. I should like them because you get a lot of opportunities to play games, but I just don't love it. My Bruins are hosting Nashville, and I just talk about the Bruins just because I talk about every one of their games. Nashville's lost 2 games in a row, ugly. They're facing a 3rd straight road game, but only going from New York to Boston. I mean, that travel spot's not that bad for them. Boston just went out to Minnesota and lost that game 1-0. Now they're coming back home from that. I don't know. I don't think the spot is that great for the Bruins, to be honest. They're down from -130 to -125. I think Nashville continues to be a little bit underrated, and this might be the type of game where maybe you want to look to take Nashville, even though I think the Bruins actually did lose at Nashville earlier in the season, so I guess there's a little bit of a revenge aspect to this, but whatever. I don't even know that they're going to remember that much. 84% of tickets, 96% of the cash coming in on Boston, so they are getting the cash percentage. I don't have a strong read on this game, though. I just talk about every Bruins game pretty much on the show at this point. Sab, what's up, man? You like Arkansas? Georgia +1. Yeah, I don't agree with it, but I don't have I don't have that strong of a read on that one. I don't know, man. I mean, you could hedge off of it if you want to, but I don't know. If you could take both teams as an underdog, because you said you got Georgia as an underdog. If the line moves and you can get South Carolina also as an underdog, here's what you should have done, man. You should have taken the money line. If you took Georgia underdog money line and then the money line flips to South Carolina being the underdog, you could, if you don't like it, you just come back and play South Carolina also as the underdog, and then you're just guaranteed to win a very small amount. Red Wings and Blue Jackets, you're probably going to like what I have to say then in one of those games, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Anyway, yeah, the Bruins, I don't have a strong feel for this game at all, though. I'm just talking about it because I talk about all the Bruins games. The market reads are actually conflicting as well, the market indicators, so I don't know. San Jose, both of these teams are in back-to-back. San Jose, I think, is in a pretty bad spot here, though. They just won outright at Toronto in a shootout, and now how many road games are they playing in a row here? And they're playing a 3rd game in 4 days, and they have to continue the road trip after Buffalo and go to Colorado. They're on a back-to-back 3rd game in 4 days, 4th game in 6 days. They did have a little bit of time off prior to that, but man, this is a long road trip. They just pulled off a ridiculous win at Toronto in a shootout. They're a bad team, man. It is a bad spot for San Jose after that big win, even though you could argue it might kill some momentum for them. Buffalo, though, they're in a back-to-back, and they just took Montreal into overtime last night, and I lost on that game, as I pointed out, unfortunately, and we did not get Luukkonen in net there. We got Reimer. So Luukkonen should be back in net here. The spot, I think, sets up a little bit better for Buffalo. They've had less travel. They are still playing a 3rd game in 4 days as well. They're on a back-to-back, but the spot is just a nightmare for San Jose. So in this game, I would lean to Buffalo. If I was going to play it. Buffalo's down from -255 to -205. I would probably look to play Buffalo to win in regulation because I don't know if I trust Buffalo to win by margin in this one either, but probably Buffalo in regulation would be the way I would look in that game. 82% of tickets, 89% of the cash coming in on Buffalo. Carolina at Detroit, that's a big game. Detroit fighting for playoff spot. Carolina, of course, one of the better teams here. Carolina coming off a win where Calgary actually gave them a fight. They barely got by Calgary winning in overtime. Now they have this one road game against Detroit. Calgary giving them a little bit of a scare, and they were off that Edmonton game. Maybe this is a spot where you're going to see Carolina play a little bit better. But Detroit, they need to play better too. I mean, they're coming off some ugly games here. They lost for me. I think they couldn't win that home and home. Couldn't get road revenge against this Columbus team that's starting to play pretty well. So I don't know, man. They've had a couple of days off to kind of readjust after that and refocus after that loss. So the spot isn't terrible for either team in this game, in my opinion. Carolina has a ton of money coming in on them, from -160 to -195. They're a huge road favorite. 67% of tickets, 87% of the cash on them. Very strong market indicators on the Carolina side, but you're laying a huge price if you like them. I wouldn't want to do it. Next up, let's talk about what you're just mentioning there. This is the play that I have, and I am on the same side as you. Sab, how do you pronounce your name? I don't know. Black Sabbath. I'm going to be on the Columbus BJs as well. Money line, fuck it. +150. Sometimes I split the +1.5 puck line, but it kind of feels like a pussy move. And if you get, if they come within 1 then you only get the puck line part of it, which it's a safer way to bet it because if they do that, you'll win the bet, but you win a small amount. I'm just going to go balls to the wall, I think, here. It's the BJs, man. We'll take them on the money line here. I think it's a fade of Tampa, though. Tampa's in a terrible spot. Tampa's down from minus 165 to minus 160. So try to get the best money line that you can on this, I guess. If the line's going to start moving down, I don't know. 72% of tickets, 79% of the cash on Tampa. So the cash percentage is coming in on Tampa. I don't really know that I would agree with that cash percentage or agree that it is actually correct because I don't know that the money is actually coming in on Tampa in this spot. I think it's a bad spot for Tampa. Columbus, yeah, I mean, I know they're coming off those big wins over Detroit, pretty big wins, but they got momentum right now. I mean, I don't know if I consider those to be huge games. They've had 2 days off now, which does that worry me that that's going to kill their momentum a little bit? Maybe, but it's only 2 days off. And the thing I like about this is that they're starting a road trip against a good team, and Columbus is fighting for a playoff spot, man. So they got to focus in these games. So starting a road trip, you do tend to be focused. I know they have Florida up next, but Tampa's also a good team. Columbus needs to keep winning games to stay in playoff position, man. And I don't think it's like a letdown spot or anything like that coming off games against Detroit when Tampa is actually probably better than Detroit. So I think you're going to get a focus effort out of Columbus here. Merzlikins might be back in net for them again. We get Elvis back in the building because he usually plays a few games in a row. He only they didn't play him back on Thursday, so he's only played one game since then. So I think, and with a couple of extra days, I think you're going to get Elvis back in net here, so that's good. Whereas I think Tampa, I think their goaltending situation is in bad shape coming into this game, and as a team, I don't like it. They were just on a roll. They'd won, 8 games in a row, although a lot of it was against not great competition, but they did beat Edmonton and they're in Washington. But their most recent games were against Washington and Florida, and they played yesterday and lost by 1 to Florida. So that was a big game. They lost the game by 1, and that's a game that's going to maybe kill that winning momentum that they had. And now it's a back-to-back, and they got to come back home off of that, even though, of course, it's not that much travel, just going, traveling within the state of Florida. But still, no rest. You got to play again on a back-to-back. You just played 2 big games in a row on the road at Washington and Florida. Now you're playing a 3rd game in 4 days. It is actually a 4th game in 6 days as well, although with 2 of them at home. I don't like how the spot sets up, man. Vasilevsky, I mean, I know he's a warrior, but he's played how many of these games in a row? He's been in net like 10 or 11 games in a row or something here, and this is a back-to-back, so you got to think you're either going to get a ridiculously tired Vasilevsky in this game, or they're going to rest him and play Johansson. And the last couple times they had Johansson in net, it wasn't good. They did win against Chicago, but that's Chicago. But they gave up 3 goals in that win against Chicago. And then the game prior to that, 5, although it was against Toronto. Toronto's pretty good, but still. And the other game was against Chicago, too, and they lost 4-1. So Johansson, I mean, I don't need to say much more about that. He's obviously a step down. So I like this. I think this is the best hockey situation of the day here for all those reasons I just said. You get a nice situational spot, and I think a nice goaltending situational spot as well there. Give me the Columbus Blue Jackets, the BJs. Even though they are coming off, that game against Detroit was an emotional game because they celebrated Gaudreau again, but it's like, I mean, how many times can you celebrate Gaudreau, man? I mean, that thing happened a while ago, and I know it was a horrible thing, but they just did it because it was the Stadium Series. I mean, I don't know. But again, whatever. I don't think they're going to have an emotional letdown coming off of that. I do think Calgary is in a pretty bad spot. They're coming off playing Carolina into overtime. Big game for them. And they played Florida the game before that, too. Tampa, Florida, and Carolina. Now they're staying out on the road. A 3rd road game in 4 days. 4th, actually a 5th road game in the last 8 days. And a 6th game in the last 10 days, all in different cities. And having just taken Carolina to overtime, and they got Dallas up next, continuing the road trip in 2 days. Really, really, really bad spot for Calgary, man. So I was looking at this, and I'm like, I'm going to play Philadelphia in this game. Problem I have with it is that Philadelphia is coming off winning at Winnipeg in a shootout. And now I know they've had rest, so they are the more rested team here. But they also have Winnipeg up next, too. So they're in a Winnipeg sandwich coming off a huge win over Winnipeg with Fedotov in net. So Urson will be back in net here, and he is their better goalie, if you really want to call it that. I mean, he made the Four Nations tournament, man. He's that good. I think for Sweden, I believe, but still, I think it's a bad spot for both teams. So it might be one of those types of games where I look for my patented over, especially because both teams played low-scoring games. I'm not playing it, but total is actually down from 5.5 juice to the over to 5.5 juice to the under, with 75% of tickets, 94% of the cash coming in the over. But when both teams are in bad spots like this, I do tend to kind of look for overs. I haven't done that in a while. I'm not going to do it here, but the over, I think, makes sense to me in this game, and I still lean to Philadelphia, but I can't do it. Calgary is in a horrific spot, though. It is a terrible spot for them, but Philadelphia coming off that game against Winnipeg, I just can't do it. And playing overs in Calgary games is dangerous, man. In Philadelphia, no problem. I mean, in Philadelphia, they don't play very good defensively. They can score decently. Calgary plays like weird, slow, low-scoring games, so I just don't want to do it. But Philadelphia up from -135 to -141 on the money line. 57% of tickets on them, but 73% of the cash coming in on Calgary. Yeah, there's no way I would be playing Calgary in that bad of a spot, so that's not going to happen. Saab, yeah. Yeah, exactly. You're listening to me too much, I think, man. Like, I can be wrong, okay? I can be wrong as well, but this is just the way that I look at these games. But you seem to be breaking the games down in the same way that I am. New Jersey at Dallas. This is actually a revenge spot, I believe, for New Jersey. I think it's a road revenge spot. They lost at home to Dallas not that long ago. Do I want to come in and actually play the Devils here? No, not really. I mean, they're finishing a road trip, so it's a difficult spot for them. 3 games in 4 days, all in different cities. They played in Elevation, came out of that, played against Vegas. But if you do like New Jersey, you could maybe argue this is going to be a bit of an injured player spot because Jack Hughes, and we saw those videos of that Devils fan losing his mind and crying because Jack Hughes got hurt. He got hurt in this game against Vegas, man. So now New Jersey's going to be without their best player coming into this game. But in hockey, I mean, you have so many guys in the rotation that I think the injured player theory doesn't really matter as much in hockey. But maybe it has a little bit of an extra, maybe it'll give you a little bit of an extra push on the New Jersey side in this one. They're going to play motivated probably for Hughes, and because this is a revenge spot, and maybe even because they got shut out. But that was still a tough game against Vegas, man. And this is still a tough spot with all these road games and the road travel there. Dallas, on the other hand, they've been sitting at home for a while, and they've just been smoking opponents at home. But the Kings have been playing pretty bad recently. But Dallas, obviously, the travel spot is better for them. They're going to be the more rested team here, so I don't really want to try to fade Dallas in that spot. Dallas is up from -155 to -170, so the money is coming in on them, and I don't know. That move is not just because of the Hughes injury. That move is way too much just for one hockey player. 89% of tickets, 97% of the cash. So it looks like some actual money coming in at Dallas. I mean, whatever, man. Whatever. I don't agree. I don't really agree with it. I would slightly lean to the Devils there. And then we got Edmonton. Edmonton's returning home from a road trip, man. So they were on a long road trip. So you know I always say it. Return home from a road trip is not a good spot. They finished the road trip beating Carolina, which is a big win, but they hadn't won since the All-Star break, which is crazy. Edmonton had a really nightmarish road trip. But again, even if it's a bad road trip, when you return home, especially if it's coming off a big win to finish the road trip, tends to not be the greatest spot, man, in my opinion. I mean, in a lot of people's opinion. You tend to get a little bit distracted. You have to get back to home life. Anaheim is certainly not a team that's going to totally draw your focus. So the spot doesn't look very good for Edmonton. And Anaheim's coming off a horrible loss, but that was last night. They just got absolutely obliterated by, or no, that wasn't last night. Excuse me. What am I thinking? Chicago obliterated somebody last night and had a huge, Chicago had a huge shot advantage going against them last night, and they still won against the Kings. I think the Kings had a huge shot advantage. I don't even know, man. But Anaheim is coming off that ugly loss to Chicago, and now they're actually starting a road trip. So a lot of times when you have a bad game at home and now you go out on the road to start a road trip, you're going to be in a focused spot, man. And probably you're going to get Anaheim's better goalie in net here in Dostal. Probably going to be the guy in net for this one. So the situation does look like it's in favor of Anaheim here. I mean, Edmonton returning home from a road trip off a big win, and Anaheim off an ugly home loss going out on the road to start a road trip. So I lean Anaheim in this one. The money's coming in at Edmonton as a huge favorite, up from minus 325 to minus 328. 70% of tickets, 98% of the cash on them. Don't agree with it. If I was going to play it, I would probably look to like Anaheim puck line. I don't know what kind of puck line you can get on that. They're such a big underdog, so you'd be playing them just to come within some number against them. Let's go to NBA, where I do have two NBA plays in a fairly decent-sized NBA slate as well. My first play is the first game up. I'm going to lay the points with the Indiana Pacers, even though I know the Pacers suck defensively. But I like the Pacers in this one. They're down from 4 to 3.5. Those 68% of tickets and cash on them. I don't really agree with that line move, and I did see more of the cash percentage on the Pacers a little while ago, and hopefully that's still the case once it comes down to it tonight, because I don't like the spot for Houston. Houston is playing in a back-to-back. They're playing a third game in 4 days, all in different cities. And they played Oklahoma City last night in Oklahoma City and played them pretty tough, man. Even though Oklahoma City had the lead for the late portions of the game, I mean, Houston hung in there, didn't go away, and they were within a couple of possessions late in this game, man. That's a tough game to be coming off of for Houston, man, having to turn around, and now you got to play this Indiana team, the Pacers, who are going to want to push the pace. That is what they do. Appropriately named Pacers team. Pacers just coming off an easy win over Chicago and staying at home, so the travel spot is a lot better for them as well. So this is a much, much better spot for the Pacers, in my opinion. So again, I'm laying the points here. Pacers have been playing better basketball as well. Pacers also 18-9 at home. I know this stuff is factored into the line, but they're much better at home. Rockets are much better at home than they are on the road, and they're on the road here. They're only 17-3 on the road, so not great on the road either. So coming off a tough game like that with no rest, Indiana also didn't play yesterday. Houston travel plus no rest off a big game. Indiana, none of those things apply. Indiana staying at home, no travel, 1 day of rest, and coming off an easy win. Yeah, Indiana is in the better spot there, so I'll lay it with the Pacers in that game. Toronto at Orlando. This is one of those zigzag spots where I was considering laying the points with Orlando. Toronto went in and beat Orlando last night. And Orlando, by the way, they know that Suggs is not coming back now. I'm pretty sure Suggs is now out for the season, unfortunately for them. So I think that kind of just alleviates that, like, question mark there, that mystery, like waiting for him to come back. Is he going to come back? I think now you can say, okay, this is going to be our rotation moving forward. So I think that's going to be a positive for Orlando. And at this point, I really think Orlando, they have enough talent that I think their record is not indicative of what they actually are. Toronto just went in and beat Orlando in the previous game here as 6.5-point underdogs, and now they're playing again in the same venue right after that. So I think Orlando does make sense. Orlando's going to have all the adjustments to make. It's a zigzag spot where they lost as the home favorite, but the line has moved up to accommodate for the zigzag, up from 6.5 to 7.5. Hey, look at that. The cash percentage is back on the Pacers again. Everybody's listening to me. It's me, man. I have that much sway. Magic up from 6.5 to 7.5 here, though. If you wanted to lay this, I would probably try to lay 7 or less here. 61% of tickets on the cash, on the Magic. 68% of tickets on Toronto. The public looks like they're coming in at Toronto because the Magic have just been playing ugly as well. But again, this is a zigzag spot. Orlando's going to be the team that has all the adjustments to make. They are still the better team. Toronto only has 6 wins away from home this year, so it's not like they've been good. They're not good in general, but they haven't been good on the road either. So we'll see what happens. Suggs looks like maybe he's going to come back during the playoffs at some point if Orlando can even make the playoffs, which they probably won't at this point. Playoffs. Talking about playoffs. But anyway, yeah, I would lean to Orlando or leave the game alone. They are still the better of those two teams, and they're in the bounce-back spot, the readjustment spot, the zigzag. So that's the way that I would look in that game. Golden State at New York, man. Golden State, their travel schedule has been a little bit difficult, I would say, recently. They're playing a third game in 4 days, a fourth game in 6 days, all on the road, all in different cities. And actually, it's the fifth game in 8 days, starting with that home game against Charlotte, all in different cities. So this could be a spot that's not the greatest spot for them, man. And everybody's, talking about how they've been playing really well with Butler and whatever. But I think this is going to be a tough spot, man, having to play at New York with no turnaround time. The Knicks are a good team still, man. One of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. The Knicks, they're returning home, though. but it was a quick road trip. I mean, Memphis and Miami, now they're coming back home. So I don't think you're going to get the full disadvantage of it being a return home spot there. They are coming off an overtime win over Miami, but Miami's been pretty down this year. So they're playing the former Jimmy Butler team, and now they're playing the current Jimmy Butler team. But of course, this is Golden State coming into your place, man. Even though I know it's one of those weird spots where you have one home game and then you have to go out on the road again and play the Lakers. That is a big game, but you're not going to overlook Golden State coming into your place, man, especially with the way they've been playing recently. And the public probably isn't going to want that much to do with the Knicks, although maybe I'm wrong. The Knicks are actually down from 4.5 to 4.5 with less juice. To me, that line screams that the public would want to come in and take the points with the Warriors because the Knicks don't play well offensively. Like, what public bettor is going to want to come in and lay those points with the Knicks there when the Warriors have been playing really well? But it does look like the Knicks are public. 59% of the tickets, 54% of cash on them, with the line dropping a little bit on them. I'm not sure that I would agree with that. It looks like a tough spot to me for Golden State. You do have to see who's playing for the Knicks here. Karl Anthony Towns, game time decision. It looks like, I think Anunoby must be back now, I would assume, for the Knicks. So you basically just got to look at Towns. He's listed as a game time decision, but also Curry, I guess, is a game time decision for the Warriors. Based on this line, it seems like maybe they're saying both of them are going to play. I don't know. It's tough to gauge with so many guys in and out of lineups, man. It's tough to even gauge a line in the NBA anymore. And then we got my other play. Let's get to it because I wouldn't talk about this game otherwise because it's so ugly. I'm going to play the Brooklyn Nets plus the points. Spurs down from 5 to 4. Spurs very public. Like, what does the public still think they have Wemba here? 84% of tickets, only 72% of the cash on them. So the Spurs still getting the public action. Maybe just because of how ugly Brooklyn is. Brooklyn, I mean, yeah, they're on another loss streak. Yeah, obviously they're not a good team, but they've had a couple of days off to try to break this losing momentum. They just played in Detroit. Now they're playing a second road game just with a bunch of rest in between the two. I think they're going to want to try to show up here, man, and split this two-game road trip that they got going on here. They're going to want to try to do something here after losing some of these games. They have played pretty competitively in some of these games. I mean, losing to Washington is ugly, but they were coming off an upset win over Philadelphia, so that was kind of explainable. They actually played really tough against Oklahoma City, although I think it was a bad spot for Oklahoma City. Got blown out by Portland, and now in their most recent game, they got blown out again at Detroit. I mean, you got some sense of pride, man. If you're getting blown out like this, you're going to want to play a little bit better, and maybe playing the Wemba-less San Antonio Spurs is the recipe here. As the Spurs, without Wemba, they have not played well, man. I mean, they won their first game, big emotional game against Phoenix. Then they lost all these games since then, although some of them were to decent teams. They did beat Memphis in there, but now, and they were on the road, but then what happened was they returned home from that road trip. They played Oklahoma City 2 days ago, man. Tough game. The Spurs actually hung in this game. The Spurs were winning this game in the second half, and they were still not losing by that much into the fourth quarter. They were still, they kind of started to slide towards the end of the game, but they kind of still hung in there. They wound up not covering the spread, but they were covering the spread this whole time. So the Spurs coming off that game, a big step-up performance against OKC. Now they got this bad Brooklyn team, which are you really going to pay attention to Brooklyn after you play OKC like that and you basically know your season is over? And up next, they got to go on the road to face Sacramento and then Minnesota and then Dallas. And Sacramento, although Dallas without Kyrie, horrific leg injury, man. I hope Kyrie is okay, even though we in Boston don't like Kyrie, but I like his vaccine pushback. I don't have much of a problem with Kyrie, especially because he did that. But Kyrie, very horrific leg injury last night, man. It is awful. Dallas is in real trouble now. Losing AD and Kyrie, just ridiculous. But anyway, San Antonio, up next, they got Sacramento, man. I think that's a big game because that was their trade partner. So that's going to be Fox playing his former team. San Antonio is going to get up for that game to play for Fox, I think, against the team that wanted to get rid of him. So I think that's a much bigger game as well. So this is basically a sandwich spot. Brooklyn, I think, has got to be playing for some amount of pride after these blowout losses they've taken. Market seems to agree with it, so I'll be on the Brooklyn Nets, even though it's ugly. You know me. I play some ugly teams once in a while. And then before I get out of here, last game we'll talk about. Clippers, I don't like the spot that they're in. I mean, they're coming off 2 big games against the Lakers, and this looks like a long road trip, that they're still on, but it's not really because they came back to LA. So, they went back home for some of this period of time. And now it's basically like they're going back out on the road to face Phoenix. So they might actually refocus, but still, I can see it going either way. Because when you just lost 2 close games to your LA, your in-city rival, the Lakers, who are starting to play really well here, that's tough, man. So I don't love the Clippers in this spot. And Phoenix, they got to be real pissed off right now, man. I can see this going both ways, though, because I thought they would be focused against Minnesota, because Minnesota's the team that swept them out of the playoffs last year, and now Minnesota's going to sweep the season series against them. I think they play them one more time, but Minnesota's now 3-0 against them and has won 7 straight games against them. Maybe Phoenix just doesn't match up well against them or whatever. Phoenix is staying at home, and I would say that's a pretty embarrassing loss. So I think I would probably lean to Phoenix in this game if I was going to play it. Clippers are crazy public, 90% of the tickets and cash. Line has moved up a little bit from 2 to 2.5 with juice. Suns look like they're in disarray, and Clippers look like they're a pretty good team, playing pretty well against the Lakers. But again, coming off those big games against the Lakers, Phoenix got to be kind of in a more embarrassed mode here. It's just a matter of, are they going to get their shit together, because they've been kind of in disarray. Like I said, I don't know, but that is keeping the public off of them, and the public is all over the Clippers, and the books are just not giving free money away. So that's the way I would lean. That's going to do it for me. Thanks, guys, for hanging out. My plays one more time. College basketball, Texas A&M plus 5.5, Nevada money line minus 110, Ohio State minus 5.5, although I think you have to lay 6 now, Arkansas plus 7, hockey, Columbus Blue Jackets plus 150, NBA, Indiana minus 3.5, and Brooklyn plus 4. That's going to do it. Hopefully we get back on the winning side here, man, with, what do we have, 7 plays, something like that. Let's do it. Tower Gang Toad on Twitter, patreon.com/Tower Gang. Support the most hilarious offensive podcast out there, man. And you get extra content, bonus content, pre-show. We do like an extra show now, not really a post-show, but we continue the show on. So you get to see the second half, we'll call it, of the main show now. Sign up, man. It's definitely worth it. And we'll be back with you with Tower Gang tomorrow. Patreon.com/Tower Gang one more time, but at 9:11 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night, Tower Gang. And I will be back again tomorrow morning with a big Wednesday slate as well. So that's going to do it. Peace.